exploring local Black history with the Halls of Power documentary about Elijah Manley. This coming Sunday, February 19th, Sunshine Cathedral will present a special showing of The Halls of Power, a documentary that showcases the historic political run of Elijah Manley, the youngest candidate for Florida State House. Tonight, we present a special interview by Sunshine Cathedral's own Reverend Durrell Watkins with film directors Janay Joseph, Graciel Quezada, and Bianca Vucetich, as well as Manley himself, as they discuss the film and why it is important for young people to get involved in the community.
So Elijah Manley, this is my third time that I get to talk to you. I love that. The first time you came to church to let people know who you are, and I just voted for you the day before. The thing, where you mail in, and so I just voted on you. It's behind us, so it's not an endorsement. I can say that now, right? That I voted for you because it's done. But so it's your first time. I noticed your amazing shoes. Like that's because I'm not only the oldest, I'm the queerest person at this table. So I noticed your amazing shoes. And then you came back. This is what endeared you. I mean, first of all, you were very endearing to the congregation anyway. You spoke well and everyone was rooting for you. But then in the primary, when someone else got the thing, you came back soon to promote somebody else. And that was super endearing. People loved that you were so committed to the cause. It's like, okay, if not me, then let's get this next one. And it was for the school board. He was running for a different position, but you were still promoting. So anyway, you became a big hit at Sunshine Cathedral, not only with your own debut, but then you were right back helping other people get noticed. So that was, you have a lot of fans now at the Sunshine Cathedral.
Thank you.
And now I'm at a table with you, look at me. And when you walked in, first thing, shoes, I did. You're the shoe guy. So not only are you the shoe guy though, you're the political guy. I guess I had voted a time or two, maybe by the time I was your age, but you have actually run for office, and more than once?
More than once, and I've never missed voting in an election in my entire life so far.
Oh wow! Oh, well, so that's what, 2 elections? I mean, you're very young to be so. And I was thinking about this earlier. When I was, the earth had recently cooled, and so when I was your age, it was sort of expected that young people get busy. That there were some really overachievers. They're in high school already, knowing what they were going to do. But if not, then certainly by midway through college or shortly after, you're supposed to have a plan, and you're supposed to be an adult, and you're supposed to be doing things. And so I started ministry in my mid-20s, and it was, it was done. Now, when young people do that, we really notice, like, oh wow, look at them being all having their life together by 40, and that was. But so is it odd for you that you sort of stand out just for knowing who you are and what you want to do and getting after it?
Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, I'm just a kid. I'm no different from anybody else, honestly. But
except
there's not a lot of us running for office right now.
So what gave you the, I don't know if it's courage, but certainly the vision, the drive to, like, I don't know, even in my, in my 20s, that I would know how to do what you've done. Like, how do you even get through the paperwork and get going? But so what gave you the drive to work all that out and get going?
Well, a lot of it was life experience. I really thought about why I was doing it first. And I remember when I first dropped off my paperwork to run for school board, which was the first race I ever ran for. That was the countywide seat that actually Alan Zeman is running for right now.
Yes, that you were promoting.
It's funny. People, usually it's the older candidate bringing a younger candidate out and promoting them, but now all of the older candidates are running to this kid, and that's 4 years later. But I remember when I first dropped my paperwork off to the supervisor of elections office, and I also remember when I did that for Tallahassee. You actually have to drive up to Tallahassee and deliver the paperwork to the state capitol in person. Just looking at the process and reading all of the laws and the statutes to make sure you don't do anything you're not supposed to do. You have to spell your name this way. You have to put all of this information in and you can't miss anything. It was so much. It was a lot of bureaucracy. It was a lot of red tape. And I'm thinking as a young person, like, I don't know anyone my age who's going to sit there and do all of this and have a lawyer look it over and all of this stuff. But I was really dedicated and committed to it. So I thought about everything in my life that I've went through, and I said, I want to be on the ballot. And although it was a hard process for someone young, and you have to spend money out of your pocket to do it too sometime, I think it was worth it.
I don't know 10 people of any age that have done it. And, so do you worry about peaking early? When I think of young people who, that didn't, I mean, they certainly young and they're just still going forever. Bill Clinton started very young. And President Obama started very young, and the vice president, she started very young, and they're still going. But some people, they start very young and they're like worn out by, their mid-30s, and you never hear from them again. So which path do you think you'll be on?
That is to be determined. But, I look at Joe Biden. He actually got elected to his county council at 23.
He was young, yes.
And by the time he got elected to the U.S. Senate, he was 29. He wasn't even old enough to be in the Senate yet. So I look at that and I'm like, our president started so young and so many of our elected officials here, and they just kept going at it. Some people lost, their first 1, 2, or 3 race. I mean, Joe Biden has lost 1 million times. Obama lost his first race for the state Senate against Bobby Rush, who is still a Congress member right now. A lot of people lose. I mean, Abraham Lincoln, guys, but like a bunch of times. Alcee Hastings, like 8 times he lost before he got to Congress. But they kept going.
And they got impeached. He still went back.
Yeah,
I love Alcee Hastings.
But I look at that and I think they were persistent. They kept doing it. They really thought about why they were in it, because it's not cheap to run for office. So like no one's doing it for, hopefully not for money or anything, because you don't get that out of it. It's an expensive endeavor.
So you keep saying that the reason, remembering why you did it, and people things remember why they're doing it. Why did you do it? What is the goal? What were you hoping to do on the school board? What were you hoping to do in the state legislature? What are you hoping to do in your next endeavor? What is it you're trying to achieve in these halls of power? We'll get back to that. What are you trying to achieve in these halls of power?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to growing up and living in poverty. Part of my story, which I talk about a lot, and I know the newspaper talked about it, and it's also featured in the documentary, was growing up homeless as a young person. And that was chronic throughout my life. That was started in elementary school. We get settled, sometimes we go homeless. And this was a single family. My mom had several kids, so being the only person providing the bread in the family at that time was a lot for, my mom. And she only had a high school education. She didn't have a lot of resources. She was disabled. So we found ourselves in poverty. And, out of caution of not, getting taken away from our mom, we kind of kept that under the table. I told teachers, they helped out. They sent shoes home sometime. They, brought hygienic products to school. They came to the house and helped us out sometime. And I remember couch surfing and all of that stuff. So I think that really motivated me to go into politics. I could have went into a lot of other things. I could have went into business and everything, but I decided to go down the route of public policy, because that's really the meat and bones of how you change the problem that we're seeing in society with poverty, with lack of focus from politicians. And I decided that was the route I wanted to take. And at first it was daunting, because there was really not a lot of young people I saw around the time who was doing that. I'm like, I'm literally going to be the experiment here, so I got to figure it out.
There's so many layers to your story. You being young, and then the economic situation of your family, and this added of, because you didn't want to sort of get in trouble or make things more difficult. You've sort of added a secrecy, which is a burden, like, oh, don't tell people that we could, mess up our family or whatever. And then in addition to all of that, at some point you discovered something about yourself, I guess, that is really, it's an amazing thing. I mean, we celebrated here, but in our society, it takes a minute to work that out, that this is something to celebrate. So can you tell me something about that?
Yeah, that was a journey. It was quite a journey. But I kind of knew early on, I knew in elementary school that I wasn't really into the girl.
Oh,
okay. I kind of figured that out.
And young you did. Everything. You're just the prodigy. So even young, you realized
But I didn't come out at that time. It was just like trying to deny it. Like, that's not possible, because growing up, and I'm just going to face it, there's a lot of homophobia in my community. So a lot of people, that was taboo. Like, you're not gay. And then for a while, a lot of people I knew and even mentioned that to was like, you're going to grow out of that. That's a phase. So it took a while. I actually had a girlfriend in middle school. And it was more of like a platonic thing.
Sure.
I actually liked her brother. I think about it now, and it's kind of weird, but it's middle school. But eventually I learned to embrace myself, but I think a lot of it had to do with, seeing other people who out there who are successful and who found their truth and were able to live it. Because
so did you learn about people like Harvey Milk or Alice Walker? Did you learn about these people in school, or how did you find these role models?
Well, I had a really good history teacher in high school. Actually, he went above and beyond. But I love reading, so sometimes I sit on Google at home and I just Google everything, the space, everything about LGBTQ, like all of the figures. And one of the
when I was your age, Google was hardbound, by the way. But anyway, go ahead.
They had the big Macintosh computers. But one of the things that stood out to me that really kind of gave me some hope, and that was Bayard Rustin, who was, I think, one of the leading LGBTQ figures in history that doesn't get talked about. He was basically the brains behind the March on Washington. Everyone thinks of that and they say, well, that's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who's great and everything, but it was really Bayard Rustin who organized and put that whole thing together, a black queer man.
Queer, Quaker, socialist. Yeah. Three great things: queer, Quaker, and socialist.
And nobody really teaches our kids that in school. So knowing that and seeing that really allowed me to see a version of myself that I didn't think was possible, because you don't really get taught those things at school, and then people tell you this is all new, this whole LGBTQ stuff is recent and modern, and I think about that and I say, well, what about Bayard Rustin, and what about all the other figures we have?
People were telling Alexander the Great, this is a phase, it's new, they've just made it up, you're gonna outgrow it. He didn't outgrow it. No. He was too busy conquering the world as his big homo self. There's giggling over here, and that's from these three people. Who are these three people?
The brains behind the operation.
The operation, which is the halls of power, the system. So not only are you like a model citizen, and not only are you an activist, and not only are you like the youngest politician I've ever met, you are also the subject, the star, if you will, of a documentary, and that's where these people come in, right? These three ladies are the director, or these three people, because I'm old and I still use old language sometimes. These three humans are the directors, right, of that film. So tell me about this, the Halls of Power, featuring Elijah Manley. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, actually, I remember getting an email from someone during the campaign, and there was someone, I want to say it was either Bianca or Janay. Maybe it was Graciel. It was Janay. It was an email, and I kept getting this email, and knowing me, I don't like to read emails. This
is Janay and Graciel and Bianca.
Yes. And I remember getting an email, ding, on my computer, and it was someone saying, we're doing a project for our class, and we want to do a short film, and we'd like to interview you. And I didn't respond at first. I'm like, this could be a right-wing thing. I wasn't sure, because I've been interviewed before by people, and then it ended up being like a right-wing rap or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, rah, rah. So I said, I'm gonna wait. And then I kept getting the email, and then finally I responded, and I was able to go for an interview at Nova Southeastern University, which was right by Broward College, which is where I go. So it was close. I was able to walk across the street and go to that interview. And it was interesting at first. I was like, me being interviewed, like,
well, it makes sense to everyone who's ever met you, but okay. Do you even get the import of that yet? Maybe you're in the middle of things. You're just in the middle. You can't see your own cheek. But you were still a student. You were doing all these things. You were a student yet, right?
Yeah.
And you've done all these things and are the subject of a film.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things. I'm not the subject of any film. Can you imagine? You're the subject of a film. That's a big deal, right?
It is. I should probably think of it as more of a bit deal.
But you're too busy being a big deal to think about it. No, that's the way it works, though, isn't it? Like your vision, you're visionary and you're mission driven, and that's what people are noticing. And you're too busy doing to impress with yourself. Yeah, which is why the rest of us are so impressed with you.
Yeah, and that's the thing I like about the film, is that the story of it and the message that it sends, which I think is bigger than me, is get involved if you're young. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter where you come from and who you are. You could do a lot of great things. Mm-hmm. And whatever cave you're in now is not the cave you'll be in later. I think there's a song, I'm not sure what that song is. I'm thinking it's just rolling through my head right now. But.
Excellent. Well, so we've done civics, and we've done politics, and we've done coming out, and we've done film. So I'm so happy these are also my favorite topics. But there's another one you'll notice this fashion statement I'm making. That's because I'm a clergy person. This is Sunshine Cathedral. I'm the minister. You've been here a couple of times. So I've got to talk about spirituality a little bit.
Yes.
You said that there was some homophobia growing up that gave you pause, you know, and then the person you sort of looked up to, that admired, he was a Quaker. He was a spiritual person. He was also socialist, and the Christian socialist movement in the U.S. was a Christian and basically evangelical movement. People don't get that. That's a different story these days, right? But no, it made sense that their understanding of the gospel was that hungry people be fed and that nobody has their basic needs denied and everyone's treated with dignity. And so those Christian values informed their politics. That's what Christian socialism was. That'll be news to people hearing even me saying this right now. But Bayard Rustin was a Quaker and a socialist and a queer man and out. Dr. King took a lot of abuse from some people in politics because it was known, and he could have, the FBI was after him anyway for 100 other things. They could have just added that to the list. And but spirituality was a big part, obviously, of Dr. King. He was not only Baptist, also Universalist, then Bayard, Quaker. Where is spirituality in this for you? Was that part of what held you back a minute, and is that part of what's propelling you forward now?
Yeah, I don't think it was the spirituality that held me back. I think it was just people who abused their religious beliefs and against me. I mean, believe it or not, at one point, I used to grow up and we used to go to church every Sunday. We had to. It was a thing we had to do, no matter what. My mom, woke up, you got to go to church. That became less of a thing, and then I started going with my neighbor, and I was just going from church to church trying to find a home. Eventually, my grandmother, who lived right over in Stranahan, we get 2 knocks on the doors from these 2 Mormons, and they're like, come here. So I went there for a while too. I found that wasn't really the thing. And then, I really discovered for me what I believe from all of my reading. I found a very deep connection to the Old Testament and Judaism as a really a religion I felt I can see myself in. And so that's been a journey. It's, spirituality.
You're still exploring?
Yeah.
Judaism, excellent. So how does that inform your work now? The spirituality you're if not practicing, exploring. How do those ancient stories of the prophets and the Torah and the wisdom writings,
in which Elijah was one.
Exactly.
The only one not to die.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And there's a legend that Elijah will return. He goes into the sky in this fiery, whirlwind. He doesn't actually die. So there's a legend he would return, which is why at Passover there's a place set for Elijah in case this is the home he shows up at. This is the night he comes back. They leave the door unlocked. They place him. And
I get those jokes every year. They're like, "When are you coming?"
When are you coming? Well, but what if you have? You know what I mean? Like that here is a prophetic voice and a prophetic life back in the middle of things. You actually do embody the return of the prophet, working for justice, working for inclusion, working for enlightenment. So I actually think there's a great deal of symmetry in all of that. So, and so now, do you think of yourself more as an activist, more as a politician, or are they the same really?
They can't be this. I tell people all the time, once you're elected, you're not an activist anymore. You're governing. You take what you learned from activism and organizing, which is the thing I think a lot of elected officials forget. They go from organizing activism, they get in government, and then they forget about all of that, and they're now a politician. I don't want to be a politician. Right. I want to take the organizer and activist, things I've learned from years working in the Black Lives Matter movement, down here in Broward County for the Alliance, working with other groups like Dream Defenders and all of these other wonderful groups doing work, and utilize that in the legislature to organize my colleagues one day in the fight for justice.
What have you learned from Elijah, working with him, featuring him in this film?
Oh man, first of all, we interviewed him and learned a lot about him directly, and then in post-production especially, we went into his background, all his social medias. We did the rundown on him, and it was insane, like how he was involved in everything. There's a clip actually, Graciel, if you want to explain, that we found one of our interviewees going to a minimum wage protest. I think it was at McDonald's, and how we.
Go ahead.
Yes.
So basically, we found that clip and he was involved in that. And, that's just an example of how, involved he's in the community and just trying to make a change and a difference, in Fort Lauderdale. So.
And I feel like it's a reflection of the times that we're living in, especially for the amount of research that we did on the film about you. You have an insane digital footprint, by the way. But yeah, I feel like it's very reflective of our generation, how we kind of just are either radicalized, either good or bad, through the internet. We kind of just find our communities online. We get involved in organizing and also connecting with other members of our community through these online spaces as well. And it was because of the fact that his work was so well documented online was how we were able to put together the majority of this film outside of the initial interview that we did with Elijah at first. So just the whole duality of learning about Elijah directly from himself, but also from other people that kind of just informed our research in that.
And if you ever want the opposition research on me, then you know where to find me.
Right. Well, thank you for featuring him, and thank you for being so courageous that that you would be featured. And there's a theologian recently, not too many years ago, I think 2 years ago, died, James Cone. He taught the seminary I went to in New York City, and he used to say that the more particular you are, the more universal you are. So I understand that they didn't really have the queer angle in the beginning. They just knew about this amazing voice, active, young, blah, blah. Turns out you're a big old queer person, and your queerness is part of all that amazingness. And so it's our experience here at Sunshine Cathedral that, we embrace ourselves as a queer church. And but we also have a lot, almost our entire, reverse from straight churches, almost our entire music staff is straight. And so it's
like that at the bars.
Yeah, it's exactly in the bars. But that if you will be you, you're giving everyone else permission to be them, and that's what's attractive to people. And so a lot of times people say, oh, well, if you do the queer angle, that's going to, no. If you will be you, that gives everyone else permission to be them, and that is what's compelling. And so thank you for being a queer activist and an out loud queer person. You're helping everyone be who they are. So God bless you for that.
Thank you.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.